This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 4.1.2b on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to state that large protein molecules are made from smaller molecules. So just as in the last video, we saw that carbohydrates are made up of smaller subunits, sometimes called a base unit. Protein molecules also are made up from smaller units, smaller molecules, and smaller subunits. All right, so protein, the point of a protein is for growth and repair. Most of our cell is made up of protein. There are many other structures also that are made up of protein besides cells, but basically proteins are made up of smaller chains called peptides. So a protein itself is called a polypeptide, many peptides, and so you can break the polypeptide up into peptide segments, but each of those peptides are made up of a small chain of what we call amino acids. So we talked about already an amino acid, but let's go a little further into the structure. So the amino acid structure is with a central carbon. If you didn't know this from chemistry, a carbon is able to bond with 4 other elements all at the same time. So it can have up to 4 chemical bonds. So in an amino acid structure, it has 4 single chemical bonds. One of those chemical bonds is just a hydrogen. One of those chemical bonds is to a nitrogen, which is the base of what we call the amine group, which is a nitrogen and 2 hydrogens. And one of the main carbon bonds is to another carbon, which forms the center of the carboxyl group, which has 2 oxygens and a hydrogen in it. Now, this R group is what we call a variable group. The R is a placeholder that is used to indicate that this is where the difference comes in the various amino acids that we have in living things. So this variable group can be one of 20 different structures. So there are 4 different categories of amino acids. You don't actually need to know that, but that's why there's 4 different colors here. But if we look at the most basic of amino acids, okay, that is glycine in the yellow area. It's the first one in the yellow area. We can see that we've got the amine group, the hydrogen, the carbon, central carbon, and then the carboxyl group. And then where the R group would be, which is highlighted in a different yellow color, there's an H. And so that is the most basic of all of the amino acids. Now, if we look at the very next amino acid called alanine, we see that its R group is slightly different and a little bit more complex. It is a carbon with 3 hydrogens, and so forth and so on. You can see progressively that the amino acids can get more and more complex depending on what is in the group. So typically there's a lot of carbons and hydrogens in the R group, but we can see that some of them will have sulfur, some of them might have nitrogen depending on what it is. Some of them have chains of molecules, others have branches, some have ring structures. You don't really need to know the chemistry of this, but what you need to know is that the R on the amino acid represents this variable group that is the differentiating factor between the 20 different amino acids that can make up a protein. So here we have a protein chain, I would say a peptide chain. This is not a full protein. And these names, the GLY, the ALA, represent the different amino acids. So we have glycine, which I pointed out to you, and alanine, which I pointed out to you, but there's all these other ones. So basically what happens is these amino acids form chains, and so they chemically bond together. So the carboxyl group from 1 will join to the amine group from the next in the chain, and so on and so forth, all the way down. And so that now forms your peptide chain and eventually your polypeptide chain. And so these 20 different amino acids in various combinations and various numbers form all the protein structures that make up living organisms.